Hey guys, welcome back to Bible Fun to Duns. Today we read 1 Kings chapter number 14, so let's get into it.
Okay, so this chapter is giving us a kind of a glimpse. It switches from one scene to the next. Jeroboam, the king of the northern tribes of Israel, and Rehoboam, Solomon's son, in the southern kingdom. Now, when you're reading this, you're supposed to be seeing that even Israel at its highest point could not stay at its highest point. So with all of its government, all of its strength, and then all of its gold and its silver and its ivory and its treasure, it is now in sharp decline. Now, the beginning of this chapter starts out with Jeroboam. Jeroboam's the king. Remember, God took the kingdom away from Rehoboam, Solomon's son, and he gave the northern part to Jeroboam. And he said, Jeroboam, if you'll follow me, I'll make your house as important as any other house. You are going to have your own empire, basically, if you just follow me. And very quickly, Jeroboam decided it was more important to centralize power than to follow the God who gave him power, and everything fell apart. Well, now here's the scene. One day, Jeroboam's son gets very sick. And here's the deal. No matter how bad you're living, when your kid gets sick, everything slows down and focuses on this one thing. So he decides that he's going to send his wife in disguise to a prophet named Abijah. Now I want you just to kind of remember this. In all of the story of Jeroboam, Jeroboam only asks the Lord for help 2 times. He asked the Lord for help just a couple of chapters ago whenever he reached out his hand and he pointed toward another prophet and his arm was covered with leprosy. He asked God's help to heal him. So when he was sick, he asked God's help. This is the only other time he's asking God for help, and it's when his son is sick. So what we're noticing is he only wanted help from God whenever his life was in trouble. The other side is when he told his wife to go to Abijah, you got to remember who Abijah is, or Ahijah. This guy is, Abijah is the prophet who originally found Jeroboam and anointed him as king. The reason why Jeroboam sends his wife to her is because he's lived his life so far from God, this may be the last godly person he knows. Because remember, Jeroboam had made a whole system where he had let anybody who wanted to be a priest or a prophet, he had hired them to just, all you got to do is come join, and he was excited to give them a spot. He was so wicked that all the other kings after him will be measured by the wickedness that he did. But in his time of trouble, he didn't look for all of those prophets. He didn't look for all of those priests. He didn't look for all the guys that he hired that were showing up for the paycheck. When he was in his greatest moment of need, he went to the last godly person he came across. Here's the other side. He sent his wife in disguise. Now, could be a couple of reasons for this. Reason number one could be because he knew how wicked he was. And he was afraid that when she showed up, that she would be recognized and that the prophet would go, no, I know who you are and I know who your husband is. Y'all have lived this far from God. Why don't you go on and just see where that takes you? He could have been worried about that. And listen, he needed an answer. So he sends her into disguise. The other reason he might have sent her into disguise is because everybody's watching him. I'm going to tell you what, when you're in crisis, everybody's watching. Where did he run when he was in crisis? He ran to the man of God instead of all these other prophets. I wonder if he was so concerned about what people thought about him, he sent his wife out, not himself, his wife in the cover of darkness under a disguise so nobody knew what he was doing. Regardless of what's happening, when she gets to the prophet, who by this point is so old he's gone blind, God has already told the prophet that she's coming. And when she walks in the front door, this blind prophet sitting at his table goes, I know who you are, wife of Jeroboam. Come on in. Let's go ahead and talk about it. The Lord's already told me you're coming. She's shocked, and it's a reminder. God's always watching. This Jeroboam, who has lived his whole life now, his whole kingdom, acting like he's above the law. If God can recognize his wife in the cover of darkness, in a disguise to a blind prophet, there's nothing his eyes have not seen. Now there's an interesting side piece to this, because the message is not what they wanted to hear. The message is that the little boy is going to die. But it's a further message that every man in the family of Jeroboam is going to die. They are all going to die because of the consequences of Jeroboam's sin. But what's interesting is verse 13, it says, "And all Israel shall mourn him and bury him, for he is the only one of Jeroboam who shall come to the grave, because in him there is found something good toward the Lord God of Israel in the house of Jeroboam." So of all the members of Jeroboam's family who could have gotten sick and died, this is a good one. And so what we're finding is, not only, it doesn't matter who you are, you could be even the king's son, and death is coming. Well, the other side of this is, what if death was a mercy that God was letting him just go on to heaven before judgment fell on the rest of the family? And so whereas everybody is concerned about that the worst possible thing that can happen to us is to die, what if God said, no, you don't understand. Death may not be the punishment. Living through this judgment may be the punishment. So I'm going to get you out of it. This is a hard story. And then the story switches to Rehoboam, and that's where Jax's takeaway comes with. Go, Jax.
Okay, so basically with the story of Rehoboam, his father always had like these big ceremonies held where he would have these guys dress up in gold, and they have gold shields, and they would like parade around, kind of.
Yeah, he would walk through, and they would like hold an honor guard for him. It was really fancy.
Right, and so basically it was like this fancy party that was held in honor of them. Right, and so then his son comes. His son's Rehoboam. All these bones. Anyway, we got Rehoboam, and so what happened to all the gold?
Okay, so the Egyptians came and attacked, and when the Egyptians attacked, they got when you attack somebody, it costs a lot to attack, because you got to pay your soldiers, you got to feed them, you got to do all sorts of things. You're away from your country, so you got to bring back something good to validate why you went to war. And so King Shishak of Egypt took all of this gold and he took it back to Egypt. Which, hey, side note here. Do you remember one of Solomon's first wives was the Egyptian princess? Solomon married a lot of these people and a lot of these ladies in order to secure treaties that would provide for peace. And now that Solomon is gone, who's the first one to come and attack? The Egyptians. Let me tell you this. When you make a deal with the enemy doesn't hold up the deal. So he comes in, he steals the gold. What does Rehoboam do?
Right, so Rehoboam, he still wants to have these ceremonies in honor of himself, obviously. So he gets metal called bronze, which is kind of like a gold look-alike that they use a lot during that age. And so he had them decorated in bronze with these bronze shields, and they would hold them up, and he was going to pretend like they were gold and that it had the same value. But in reality, bronze was a lot cheaper, and it wasn't like as precious or expensive as a metal. And so we see a lot of symbolism in this story right here, where on the outside we can pretend like we're good and we're godly and we're great people, but really on our inside, that's what matters. It's the contents of our heart, and that's really what gives us our value.
That's true. I think if we were going to write any one word over Rehoboam's acts with those shields of gold and shields of brass, it would be the word hypocrisy. He wanted everybody to still see that everything was great. The problem was the gold was gone, and they were all now just pretending. That's hypocrisy. When we read through this story, understand Israel is looking for a king, but every one of these kings are failing them. So it's pushing us ahead to know that if Israel gets a real king, the real king cannot come even from this family. This king has to come from heaven. He may be born into this family, but he's got to come from heaven. He's a Messiah, and his name is
Jesus.
That's who we're waiting on. All right, so we'll see you tomorrow as we wrap up this week's readings. Bye.